Welcome to the Other Student Ministry Podcast. Matthew Ferrer here, one of your co-hosts. This week, Justin Knowles is out speaking at a summer camp. And so we thought that it would be fitting in the nature of summer camp to talk with a few youth pastors about the importance of building a strong summer camp culture within your youth group. So we have two separate interviews for you today, one of which being with Brian Howard of Calvary Christian Church in Westlake Village. Brian is the high school pastor of that group, and Justin had the chance to sit down with Brian actually at summer camp and just talk about building a strong summer camp culture. Later on in the podcast, I had the chance to sit down with Dayne Scalon of Willamette Christian Church up in Westland, Oregon. Dayne is the junior high pastor of a wonderful group that is doing some really cool things with their summer camp. They take high school students as their camp leaders for their junior hires, and it's a really beautiful model. I've seen it myself, and we wanted to sit down and just talk with them about how their team was able to foster that culture and that culture of peer-led summer camp. And so we're really excited for the podcast today. We hope that it's informative. We're learning a ton from it ourselves. And so without further ado, here's Justin and Brian.
What's up, everybody? Justin here with the Other Student Ministry Podcast, and I'm at summer camp right now with my good friend, Brian Howard. Say hi, Brian.
How's it going, everyone?
Hey, and we're talking about hacks and how to build a strong summer camp culture. And I've been at Marietta Hot Springs Calvary Chapel Conference Center with Brian, and we're actually mid-summer camp right now. We're about to go into our last night, and I've been here and I've just been super impressed with Brian and his team and the students and the camp that he's been putting on. And I just had to be like, hey, dude, do you want to just come on the podcast and just talk a little bit about it? Because what I'm seeing is pretty cool and pretty incredible. And I want other people need to know some tricks and tips, because I've been obviously watching you. Like, I've known you for 8 years now, which is crazy. Yeah. But also been watching on social media and just how you've built up this camp culture, and just hearing a little bit of your story since you've come on like 4 years ago. Yeah. And I would love just to know. So can you just kind of give the people, who's Brian Howard? How long? Where are you at? How long have you been there? And kind of what you do. What's your role?
Oh man, Justin. Well, thanks for that. I'm Brian Howard. I'm the high school pastor at Calvary Community Church in Westlake Village. Westlake Village is over in Ventura County, and I've been at the church for 7 years now. I've been the high school pastor it'll be 5 years this fall. It's just been an awesome ride. Love being a part of the church. The church really invests in and supports the youth ministry, so we've gotten to do some really cool stuff with a really great team around me of men and women who just love Jesus and love seeing kids become disciples of Jesus. And obviously summer camp has just been a really central part of how we've accomplished that mission. Yeah,
which is big, because like summer camp, me and you kind of hit summer camp the same way in strategy and stuff like that. So I would love just to hear just a little bit more about like how you guys how do you ramp up your summer camp? What's the hype of your summer camp? Because give us the idea when you took it over 4 years ago, what was the culture like? What did you do? And then what's the difference between what happened then when you took it over versus what you do now, and kind of like the feel and the hype that comes around it?
Yeah, well, I took over, and a lot of the stories are like this, where you take over in transition, and summer camp tends to be in transition one of the things that lags. And so in transitioning between some different things, we were taking probably around 65 kids to camp, and that was a great thing, and it was an awesome thing where we were going. But then we really started to emphasize summer camp as something that everyone goes to rather than just some people, and that really began to explode, and so our numbers began to grow. But what we ran into is we were going to a camp, and it's a great camp here in California, but we just started to run into a place where we didn't have enough spots to take all of our kids. And so one year we left 65 kids home on the wait list, which some people say to me, what a great problem to have. Well, it's really not a great problem to have.
Yeah, that's a bad problem.
When parents are going, I want to send my kid to camp, but I can't. And so it was 2015 that we decided to depart from that camp and go do our own thing. And I'll tell you, it's been a lot more work, but the payoff has been exponential, and it's completely made it worth it.
That's awesome. So what's so granted, 4 years ago, you were taking 65 students. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, you've taken this week, you have 270 students. So literally, I can't even do math right now at the top of my head. It's a way different compared to what you're doing, because you're running your own camp.
Correct. Yeah.
And you were going to a planned camp.
Correct. Yeah.
And so I would love just to hear with you, because this is like the biggest thing too of like, because I go to CIY for summer camp and I love it because it's planned.
Sure. Yeah.
You stepped away from Hume, right? Which is a phenomenal camp.
Amazing. We love it,
And so you're doing your own camp. Why did you want to take on all the work that comes along with that?
Yeah.
And do you feel like it's benefited your students?
Yeah. So the tension for us is we probably wouldn't have done our own camp if we had continued to get more spots at the other camp. But because we couldn't get the spots, our hands were kind of forced that we had to do something different. And so we found a facility. Myriad Hot Springs has been just absolutely amazing for that. And so it's been an enormous amount of work, but the payoff for us is really twofold. The first is that in addition to all these students we get to bring 48 adult leaders this week. And that's a huge thing where we have some people leading in cabins, like in the rooms, but other people are running recreation, they're running worship, they're running different parts of camp. And that allows us to raise up men and women in significant leadership roles for camp. And that becomes a really incredible thing. And then I think the second payoff for us is that we get to tailor an experience for our kids. When we go to planned camps, which we do for winter camp, we go to Hume Lake and it's incredible. But the content, the experience, the songs, the speakers, all of the messaging, it's meant to hit a lot of different kids from a lot of different places. But as pastors, we all know our kids and we know what hits them best. And so to be able to tailor content toward them in particular is a really special thing. And it's something that we've really enjoyed. And it's thrown fruit as we leave camp. And they've really been able to connect in different ways. And so for us, being able to tailor the content to our kids has been a value for us and one that we think we'll continue to do for some time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to hit a little bit on, like you said that you brought like 48 leaders here. Yeah. And I know that you said, and obviously the biggest part, me and you, we come from pretty decently sized churches. Correct, and like, I always stress of like, it doesn't matter if you have a team of people, because I'm noticing, I think you have a team of 3.
My staff?
Yeah.
So there are 5 full-time staff people in high school. Yeah.
But not all of them. So like you have some of them doing certain things, but I've been most impressed is like I thought Devin was on staff because of how much you've given her and all that stuff. So you've actually like created avenues for adult leaders, volunteers to like run huge parts of your camp. I mean, talk about like a leadership development thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a guy and a girl running recreation, which is a massive part of all summer camp, these big games, group games and competitions. And to put that weight on their shoulder does 2 things. It allows me to be pastor man rather than recreation guy. And it also allows 2 people to step into a role where they become platformed in our ministry. We're leaving this week. They're going to know those two people. They're going to know them better. They're going to see their faces and recognize them as leaders in our youth group, even larger than it is before. So it's not just the number of leaders we bring. Numbers are great, but it's the responsibility we're able to give them and the creativity they're able to have within that really makes it special.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I would love to know, and I'm sure everyone else, like, I mean, when people hear that 4 years ago you took 60 kids to summer camp to taking over 250 kids this year, like, what the heck happened? Like, what did you do? Can you give us like a couple practical hacks? And this goes with like whether last year you took 10 kids to camp and then this year you want to take 20, or if you took 1,000 kids last year and you want to take 2,000 this year or whatever, like the principles are the same. So like, what did you do and your team do to kind of like create like summer camp is the thing to do? And what did you do to put an emphasis on it for students like, because and mistake me if I'm wrong, you took this year at camp, there's over 70 kids who have never been before. So like, can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's, when I heard that, I was blown away.
We looked up a few years ago and realized that we were taking growing numbers of kids to camp, but it was typically just kids who were part of our youth group. And so while it was cool to have big numbers, we realized we weren't doing evangelism particularly well in the camp space. And so we rolled out a thing a few years ago where we had a little bit of money we carved out of our budget and decided we're not going to use this on programming. What we're going to do is we're going to use it on camp. And we've created this first 20 culture. And so what we did is we rolled out this thing when we launched camp. We have this camp launch Sunday, and we announced that the first 20 kids who sign up, who have never been to a camp with us, that's high school or middle school, get to go for 80% off. And so this year we charged 80%. 80. So we charged $500 for camp. First 20 kids who have never been to camp before get to go for $100. And what that does is within the first 9 days, we had 20 people signed up already because they wanted those first 20 spots.
And they're inviting friends.
Yeah, and they're inviting friends. And it gets the ball rolling that my friends and his friends and her friends are already going. And it creates this energy that our camp is a place where so obviously if there's 70, 50 of them didn't get the discount, but the first 20 created the momentum for those other 50 to start to feel welcomed in, and it created the momentum on signups that you want when you launch, so people start to realize, oh, my friends are going to camp and I do want to go with them.
Dang, man, I'm stealing that. By the way, like I already told Brian this, that I'm stealing that idea for our summer camp next year. I think that's phenomenal.
It's huge. And obviously it comes out of a budget, and all of our budgets are small and smaller than we'd like them to be. And at the same time, we just say summer camp is such a value to us that we're willing to take that money and put it toward camp rather than some other event that happens some other time in the year. That summer camp isn't just an event for us, it's the event of the year. Mm-hmm. And everything we do builds up to it, and everything we do flows out of it. And when we start to see it that way, I think students start to realize that summer camp isn't optional. It's the thing you've got to be at.
Yeah. If you cannot miss one thing, it's this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a power too, when you start to put leaders, not just in some roles, but in every role, and you get these volunteers who are taking significant portions of camp. What you find is that those volunteers are constantly talking about summer camp. So all the way through the spring, we have leaders who are meeting kids, and it's almost like the conversation's like, hi, great to meet you. What's your name? What school are you at? What grade are you coming to camp? It's part of our lineup. Our leaders are so bought in because they've gotten to actually have responsibility and authority here at camp rather than just running around doing what we've asked them to do. They get to be creative. They get to be part of it. And I think that creates a culture where our leaders want to invite kids to camp. They don't want kids to miss camp. Yeah. And that's been a huge thing for us as well.
Yeah. I've been watching like your leaders. I've been really impressed like with everyone. It's been so cool to see. Like I literally cannot tell who's on staff and who's not. You know what I mean? And it's just, that's super cool that you give that authority away. And I love that. Tell me a couple other things of like some hacks of like all throughout the year to build this summer camp excitement and culture, to the fact that you could get 70 kids who have never been to camp before. Like what else have you done? I love the 80% off thing. That's awesome. But like what else?
Yeah, I think two things I can think of right now are social media is a huge leverage point where the consistency of posting on social media, not just come to camp, but to build vision into why they want to come to camp and to post things that stir their hearts or make them smile or make them laugh and stir up those memories from last year. You know, kids really do have to decide every year, will I go back to camp this year? And when we can post the memory of that time we were doing a dance party over there, that time we were worshiping to this song, or that time we were having that game, and you bring back those memories on social media, it can be a really powerful outlet for them to have that nostalgia and have that desire to come back. And then the second thing, a couple of years ago, we looked up and realized that we have been pushing camp, but we never really took time with our students to explain why we think camp is not just a good idea or a fun thing, but a biblical principle of what it means to get away and be with the Lord, and how Jesus would retreat from his disciples even to be with the Lord. And so we decided a couple of years ago to start this thing called Camp Launch Sunday, where we take an entire Sunday just to explain why we do camp. It was the first day you could sign up. It's when we announced our first 20 was open. It was all of these things. Justin was gracious enough this year. In case you didn't hear this, Justin is here because he's our speaker. He's crushing it. He's doing an amazing job. But he came on that Sunday just to get our kids hyped up. And so we create a sense of momentum on that. This was in April of this year, and just an opportunity to say, hey, camp is coming. This is months away, but we are already excited about it, and to cast vision for it rather than to just keep pinging them with sign up requests.
Yeah, just like, hey, sign up, announce and sign up. But you kind of like, I was there. It was awesome. Yeah. You kind of got, and you heard stories, and I think I want you to talk about this too, because maybe I'm jumping ahead of you, but I think like a hack, and I loved it because I see it all over social media too, at least on like your stories for your ministry, is you literally have almost every other week a student from camp last year tell their story of what happened at camp. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So starting Camp Launch Sunday, whenever that is in the spring, April, all the way through summer camp, we do these camp stories. And so we just get a student in who has been to camp. We shoot a 2 to 3 minute video with them where they share their experience at camp. And we have them share kind of what God did in their lives. And it serves as actually a really great tool in 2 ways. One is it's obviously promoting camp, but the second is that it actually fits as part of our worship service. It's like a testimony that would happen when a student gets to share. And so that actually stirs us into worship. It transitions us in. It's a really great video piece. But I think the biggest thing kids need to see is that other students are really wrestled with whether they should go to camp. And most of the stories start off with, I was nervous to go to camp. I came to camp. It was amazing. God did something, and I think you should go too. And as much as we as leaders can pump camp, when they start to see their peers from different different grades and different schools. We value diversity on that screen of people. When they start to see there's all these people from all over the place who want to go to camp and want to do so enough so that they're willing to get on video and say it to the whole world, that adds credibility to what we're saying, and it adds weight to it.
Yeah, it gives them a why.
Yeah.
Like that's like oh, camp is what they're all hyped up about, blah, blah, blah. But then when they hear their friends say, my life was changed at camp, that if they're on the fence, they're most likely they're going to be going.
Exactly. And it draws them in to start to see themselves on that screen. Okay, what if that was my story? So many of these camp stories start with, I was alone. I didn't know anyone. I went to camp, and now my best friends in the whole wide world come from this church because I went to camp. And even on just even for kids who don't know Jesus and are far from him, and they're just visiting and checking out our church, they start to see that and go, okay, this is more than a boring church camp. This could be the game changer for my entire life.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Yeah. I love that. And then give me one more. What's one more other thing that you feel you have done with your team to be able to give like this good summer camp? Because man, I'm not gonna lie, like rec is huge. Kids are excited. You know, do you think that high schoolers would be done like dressing up in stupid ways to be able to do that kind of stuff? Like what else have you done to like make this a really big deal?
You know what I think? We always say this. We use this phrase when we're talking about camp, and that's that everything rises and falls on chapel. And so we use that phrase at chapel. You may call it the meeting or the rally, wherever that environment is that we're preaching the word of God and we're responding in worship. We put the majority of our dollars and energy and creativity and thought and intentionality into chapels. We really believe if chapel, the experience where they're hearing the preached word of God and responding in worship, if that's solid, everything else will come along with it. If that fails, nothing else will be awesome. If kids just think this is kind of the boring church thing you have to do at church camp, then camp really isn't going to be that great. But we put our energy into production and bringing in the right setup to create the environment. Our band picks people and brings people in. We put together incredible sets. We really do value our speaker and really are intentional and careful about that. Having Justin here was a blessing to us in that we said, okay, who's the best person we could bring in for this year? And we really, with Justin here, we really do believe Justin was the right man for this. And
I'll pay you $20 later for that.
That's right. Yes, exactly. But really, we looked at it and said, okay, who's the best guy we could get? And maybe Justin couldn't do this. We know he's speaking all over the country this summer, but for him to be here, for us, we just value chapel enough to say we want to go get the best possible people. And even if they say no, or even if we're not able to do everything we want to do, we want to put our energy into chapel because everything rises and falls on chapel.
Yeah, dude, that's so good. And I could honestly say it has, and it's been incredible to watch. You've had some sweet experiences, which I love. With your permission, like post some of the pictures that I took. You guys did this incredible thing of like the whole theme this week is live free. And so like and you had these awesome cards that said, you know, if I was not afraid, I would ... And you had students respond to and reading some of those were incredible. And some of them were sad and some of them were heartbreaking. And then some of them were like, it's just cool to see that because I was all anonymous. And you did this amazing survey, which you did last night. And it was, I can't even explain it. It was an anonymous survey that had like probably 25 questions and it was yes or no. Everyone filled it out and then they randomly passed it out the next day. So you did not get your own and you basically read through all the questions. And then if your card that you were holding said yes, you would stand up and simply just to show and prove that you were not alone in whatever it is. It was incredible. So I'm going to post pictures of those down in the show notes down at the bottom. So make sure you check those out because it's pretty cool. And so Brian, dude, thank you so much. One, it's been an honor to be here and to be with you and just to physically see the hype and the camp culture that you created because it's been honestly so fun for me. And where can people find you? Are you on Instagram, social media, Twitter? How can they follow your ministry to see some of the things that you've done?
Instagram, Twitter, Brian John Howard is my handle there. And then on social media, Calvary HSM 805, and that's for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're pretty active on Instagram. That's sort of the driver of all of our social media and where you'll see a lot of camp stuff if you're looking for it.
So, and I'll put the link down in the show notes as well. Man, Brian, thank you so much for sharing some hacks in summer camp culture. If you could even just take a little bit of the fire hose of information that you just got from Brian as far as like building that culture. I'm sure he wouldn't mind if you hit him up as well. But it's been so fun to see, man, to go from what you were telling me about 4 years ago to where you are now, and seeing that culture that you developed within your student ministry and the leaders that you have here is pretty incredible. So thanks for being on.
Well, Justin, thanks for coming here and speaking this week. Really appreciate your voice into our ministry and this podcast and the community that's built around it. You guys, it's a blessing to be a part of this and an honor to get to talk with you today.
Awesome. Well, guys, we're out. We'll see you. That's Brian Howard from Calvary Christian Church in the Ventura area in Westlake Village, right, in LA. This is Justin Knowles. I'm out. See ya.
Dane, welcome to the podcast, man. We're so excited to have you. And I don't know if you know this, but like I kind of feel like Willamette has become like my spirit animal in a way. I was really close to Jeff Jansen. It's not that I'm not now, but I still am. But he was like a big mentor for me. What was that?
We took him from you, so you're not allowed to be close to Jeff anymore.
He was like a big mentor for me, and really kind of shaped a lot of how I lead and kind of how I think and how I process and even just do ministry. And so having had the chance to like come up and hang out with you guys a few months back was like such an honor and such a privilege, and kind of gave me eyes on something that Justin had talked about a year prior. Justin had been a camp speaker for you guys at Black Lake, which he got back from Black Lake and was like raving about it. He was like, I have to tell you everything. And
that's so encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah.
And literally every CCV encounter that I've ever had. I mean, now we have like Ryan and Jeff working. Like you guys you produce excellence down there is what it seems. So it's an honor every time you guys get to come up.
Oh, dang. So Justin, his big thing that he was like really harping on was the involvement of high school students as your camp leaders. And just like what a beautiful model that is. And knowing that that's not common. That's not something that like, that just happens, that like high school students want to give up a week of their life to like, hang out with junior hires. I feel like that's hard enough for like adults to try to like wrangle that and bring that in. But to have high school students dedicate a week and see the value and importance of that and want to like jump full in with junior hires is awesome. And so that's kind of like what we want to talk about. And so will you take a few minutes and just explain what Black Lake is?
So Black Lake is our camp, and our church, our student ministry is in an interesting situation because a lot of churches will send both their middle school and their high schoolers to camp, but because we actually send our high schoolers on a missions trip. And so I think one of the reasons that makes camp so cool at Willamette is we can pour everything into it. Like, I mean, we can pour all of our camp into like all of our camp focus and camp ideas and camp budget. Like it all goes into that. And then we can pour everything else into our high school missions trip. And so I think one of the reasons that makes Black Lake so great is it literally takes our entire focus because it's all we have. I mean, I worked at a summer camp earlier this summer where they did their summer camp, like their high school and junior high camp, like in 2 weeks consecutive, like back to back. And I was actually really impressed with the way they were able to pull that off. But like, we could never do that at the level that we do Black Lake 2 weeks in a row, just because all of our focus is poured into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, I think our kids go because we like just put so much intentional programming into it. I mean, Justin went and saw Black Lake, like he saw the facility, and it's a decent camp. Like but it's in a parking lot. Like the facility itself isn't a huge like sales pitch. Like, I mean, we've made it a great one because of how much we have poured into it, and like every minute of camp is planned and programmed and organized, and the free time, I say with air quotes, is absolutely not free. I mean, we want it to like feel free or whatever, but like we need to make sure that it's programmed out. And so I think the intentionality that we put behind like the scenes is what makes that week so great. And to a kid, like to a middle schooler, I think are just like, yeah, Black Lake's just a really fun camp. And when I hear kids say that, I go like, I know it's not a fun camp. So I know like we did something good for it, because if you just went to Black Lake and had Black Lake do Black Lake, then it wouldn't be as good, I know, as if like Willamette went in and we did our programming with our worship speaking and games and stuff. So
yeah,
that's a 30-second. That's way more than 30 seconds. That's whatever, however long I talk, like overview of what camp is.
No, that's perfect. I'm curious, how did you guys come to making Black Lake the only camp option? Like, what was the thought process behind just doing a camp for junior hires and then taking your high schoolers on a mission trip?
Yeah, so that wasn't a decision that was made before I was on staff, but it was made by, I think, Chris Nye, who was the youth pastor here, who now works down in San Francisco at a church called City Impact.
Mm-hmm.
And then Andrew Martin, who's the students pastor. When they were both working together, and Andrew's obviously still at Willamette, I think the big decision was just like, you know what, these kids, and for our context a little bit, like there's so much in West Linn to do, like, I mean, not like in the city, but like there's so many opportunities for the kids to go out and they go on family vacations, like 5 times a summer, and then there's a big Young Life presence in West Linn, and so like they do a big Young Life camp every year, and so we just kind of saw, I mean, they just kind of saw like just there's what you just call like the West Linn bubble, and I grew up in West Linn, so I can talk about the bubble forever. Like me and my wife both are like, man, like it's just crazy, because if you don't get outside of West Linn as a high schooler and you've been there your whole life, like you kind of have no perspective on the world. And so Chris and Andrew had the brilliant idea probably, I don't know, 8 years ago to just take them on a mission trip. And I think they took them, their first ever mission trip was like to either Nicaragua or Montana. It was Nicaragua. Yeah. So they went to like Nicaragua.
Yeah.
And just put them all, like, I think there was only about 30, maybe 30 kids. But I think after that experience, they came back and Chris just saw the change in our student ministry of just like, wow, once these kids take their eyes off themselves, then like things start to change. And so what's funny is that like a lot of our high schoolers who come and lead at Black Lake after going on the missions trip, it's like Black Lake's super fun, and it's not like it's not like a missions trip, but like they're serving pretty hard the whole week, and so they get back, and a lot of them aren't super. Sorry, my cat might walk across my computer, so just be ready for that.
I'm into it.
Yeah, our kids aren't super. They might not feel like that camp high, like whoa experience, because they've been serving for now 2 weeks of their summer, but. I almost feel like some of the high schoolers that come with us, like that's their summer camp. And even though they're serving and they're doing it, like after spending a week in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco or wherever we go, like it's, and those are like for our student leaders, they get like those 2 weeks to kind of serve with us, and they're serving in both weeks. Just one feels a lot more hands-on and intense than the other.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. So I'm curious, you said that Black Lake takes place in a parking lot. So how do you hype up students? How do you hype up junior hires to want to go? How do you say, like, put down your West Linn experience, if you will, and come hang out with us in a tent? Well, I know it's not a tent, but you know what I'm saying, like in a parking lot. Like, how do you get them from here to there?
I might be dogging on the Black Lake facilities too much, because it is still a camp, and there's like big fields, and there's a huge lake that we boat on the whole time. But
cool.
There's a park in the middle, which always like it's like, okay, this isn't a camp anymore. But,
is there a blob?
Dude, this last year, like we lucked out. Wait, did you ask if there was a blob?
Yeah.
Yes, there's a blob. Yeah.
Oh heck yeah.
There is, and there's a weight limit, but there's a weight limit. You know, we don't. They're not super strict on like the weight difference. So we kids, which is really fun. But honestly, dude, I think one of the awesome parts of camp is we have a video guy come with us every year, and he's walking around and he has someone filming a drone with him or for him, and then it's like he gives kids like GoPros, and he puts together daily camp videos, recaps.
Yeah.
And he shows them at the end of each day of camp, but we use those when we're hyping up camp for like next year. So we announced Black Lake in January. And dude, it was like the perfect Sunday. Like honestly, like you ever have those moments like where you like leave a program and you're like, that I couldn't have planned for it to go that good. Like obviously, like you can't plan for it to go that bad sometimes or that good. Like it was like the way that we announced it was going to be good, and I was excited about it. But it was better than I could have even hoped, because we So we gave all of our leaders in January, we gave them all like the little poppers with confetti in them.
Yeah.
And we just had them hold them in their pockets for like most of the program. And then right before, do you guys still play the Impossible Shot?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so the Impossible Shot was probably like $30 or $40. And so right before we announced it, some little 6th grade girl hit the Impossible Shot. So the room was just like already buzzing. And then I announced Black Lake, and I probably looked for like an hour to the right song to play like when I announced it. And so I played Katy Perry's Roar. And so I said like, and the dates are August 13th through the 18th. We're going to Black Lake. And then right when I said that, I had our sound guy cue like, I've got the eye of the tie. And then our leaders were blowing off like the confetti things. And so like the room was just buzzing. And like within the first 2 weeks, we had 200 signups.
Oh, wow.
So it was like crazy. And honestly, like, and then we play our Black Lake videos, like, just to hype them up, like probably for the first month after we announced it, like before the program, we just like play one day of last year.
Yeah.
So they just like, for the kids who are in it, they're like, yeah, I did that. And the kids who are like incoming and didn't do it, they're like, oh my gosh, that looks so part of it is like media, like, and how intentional, or again, we are with just, we want to film every day because one, parents love that stuff. Like when we post it on Facebook, they get to see their kid like falling off like a blob or an inner tube or paintballing or something. And then also we just use that the whole next year to hype. Like when we start talking about Black Lake again, we just play a video and kids immediately get excited because the videos are just done super well and they see themselves, which is exciting for kids, you know?
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. So I want to jump into 3 hacks. So 3 hacks on how to build a strong summer camp culture. So what are like 3 key things that you guys have done to bring Black Lake to where it is now?
Love it. Yeah. So the 3 things I would say is, number 1, this might be the most important one, is invest in your leaders year round. I mean, we tell that to our leaders like all the time, but like, if there's like a slump in the middle of the year, like we'll just kind of use it as motivation. We're like, guys, this is Black Lake training. If something's happening in your small group, like your Sunday small group, like you're putting in relational coins so that when kids are staying up late and they're not falling asleep, you can actually be like, hey, let's go to sleep. And because they know that you've been there and they love you and they respect you, they're like going to listen to you. And so like we have a couple, like we always have a shortage on leaders, and so we have some leaders come in who don't know the kids, but like that's usually where they start building relationships for next year because our kids are just awesome. But yeah, so like I'd say like hack number 1, invest in your leaders year round. Like that can't be a thing that you think of 3 months before camp. Like I would say if you guys just got back, I know CCV just got back from summer camp, right? Like,
yeah.
And Justin does this better than I do, but I would say like right now is when you start looking at leaders for 2018, you know, like and start investing in them and start pouring into them. And if you see like, and for us, like you said, yeah, student leaders. So like high schoolers, when you see like, we had some high schoolers come back from our missions trip and they were just like really hyped about wanting to serve or wanting to come to Black Lake. And it's just like now, like, okay, we're already full for this year, but like, how do we use the momentum after a missions trip or momentum after Black Lake to kind of like, how do we start using that to like fall launch and then like winter, like just like down kind of time. And then we just, if you can hold their attention and keep building into them, pouring into them, then you have them for Black Lake next year because they just want to go. So
yeah, that'd
be hack number 1. Number 2, I already talked about this, but plan out every single minute. Like, I think it's such a discipline and it sucks and it's boring and it's hard, but like literally if you're going to camp for 48 hours, you should know, I think you should have 16 hours dedicated to sleep, right? Like you should know what, like as boring as that is and stuff. Like, I think the kids feel that intentionality. Like if they feel like, oh man, I just watched my leaders planning the game right before we started, they're gonna be like, okay, well, like I hope, like I don't know, and we've just noticed that on like our Sunday programming as well as Black Lake. But the more intentional you can be and the more you can plan, just the better your camp is. I mean, I remember I heard this analogy from a mentor of mine. Because me and my wife were like stressing about wedding planning. This guy just looked at me and was like, listen, this day will take more work than any day of your entire life, but the more work you put into it, the more you can enjoy it. And he's like, and that's honestly how ministry is too. Like the more work you can put into anything you do, just the better, the more fruit you'll see from it. And that's not necessarily like like, I mean, whatever you count as fruit, you know, like, but like if you're planning a set, like a worship set, right, and you just like pick like the 4 songs that you just know are going to kill it, like, okay, that's great. But if you like actually know, like, wait, what if we needed, like, you know, you've seen that. And so plan every minute out of camp. And it's meticulous and it's boring, but I think I've just seen the fruit in that so much. And then the third thing, I would say the third hack that I would say is start asking like students in like February or months and months before you go, start asking middle school students what they loved about camp last year and what they didn't like, what they like didn't care about camp last year, and start like listening to them. Because honestly, I'm 24, so I'm not super old, but I'm also not super young, and so like I don't remember really what it's like to be a middle schooler. I mean, parts of it I do, but like when I was in middle school, I just loved like what was their name? It's like some like punk rock band, and I wanted to like play Halo. Like nowadays, the kids are hip to the game. You know, they don't like that stuff anymore. And so start talking to your students and asking. I mean, for instance, like we do a talent show every year, and I know this is going to get published, and I'm sorry for anyone who loves it, but I hate the talent show. I like absolutely hate it. It's just, I don't know why, but it's just like every time it happens, I'm like, why do we do this? But I started asking people in February, like, what was your favorite part of camp last year? And like almost unanimously, like people brought up the talent show. So I'm like, dang it, we're doing it again, I guess. And so like just listening to them, like asking your students questions, and then, you know, listening and doing what they like responding to what they ask and tuning camp that way. Because ultimately, if like I could build an amazing camp for people who are, you know, ages 20 to 30, because I know what those people like, but we're not doing that. You know, we're building a camp for the like the 8th graders, right? So like the people who have been there forever and they want something new, or they want them to come back. And so I think just it takes the humility to say no to what your own great ideas might be, for the sake of like doing what the kids like. For instance, the talent show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say, those 3 hacks: invest in your leaders year round, plan out every minute, and then start asking kids months before camp what they liked. That's why I'm sure I could think of more over the next 24 hours. But those are the 3. When you asked me yesterday to kind of start thinking, those are the 3 that I'm like, if I could pinpoint how Black Lake got to where it is today, is because those things are done really just intentionally, and not always really well, I'll say that, but there's always a strive for doing those 3 things really well.
Dane, thank you so much for sharing just some wisdom and insight. We're praying for you guys as you go to camp, and we hope to have you back on the podcast at another time.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. And honestly, whenever you and Justin, or if ever you and Justin are up in Portland, please come over. I want to see you guys. So it's always fun when you guys come up. So thanks for having me. Super appreciate it. And yeah, we'll this is not goodbye. We'll be in touch.
Heck yeah. Thanks, man.
Cool.
On behalf of the Other Student Ministry podcast, Justin Knowles and myself, Matthew Ferrer, I want to say thank you so much to Brian Howard and Dayne Scalon for sharing some wisdom and insight into how to build a strong summer camp culture. We are huge fans of summer camp. Here at the Other Student Ministry podcast, we talk about it constantly, like almost every episode. And so this has been such a fruitful conversation for us. We have gained so many things and have learned so many things, and we're just so grateful for the conversation. And so thank you so much, guys. Speaking of which, we want you to be a part of the conversation as well. And so you can engage with us in 2 different ways, one of which being using the hashtag YMHacks on Twitter. Once again, that's using the hashtag YMHacks on Twitter. You can engage with us on that platform, sharing any hacks that you might have about how you've developed a strong summer camp culture. Once again, we're just trying to learn and trying to get better. These conversations help shape us and grow us as well. And so we've missed things, obviously, and so we want you to join in the conversation as well. So would you do that on Twitter? The other way is by submitting any questions you might have for continued conversation or further conversation via our email, theotherstudentministrypodcast@gmail.com. You can reach us at theotherstudentministrypodcast@gmail.com. We'll do our best to answer those questions in upcoming episodes and to continue that conversation. If you love the podcast, if you like the podcast, you can subscribe to it on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube just by hitting that little subscribe button in the corner, and then share the podcast with some friends. If it's something that you're learning from and growing with us, we're just so grateful that you're on this journey with us. We will see you next time.